Hello viewers, in previous session of standards, we discussed about the different types of benefits of standards. After that, if you remember, we discussed about ISO and different types of popular ISO. As there are two types of ISO standards, generic as well as specific. So, specific is for specific industries, for specific areas. So, we discussed about popular ISO certification like OSS certification. After that, if you have ISO 9000 series, which is QMS, quality management standard, which is very important. After that, ISO also take count the environmental effect of industries. So, we measure the effect of environment on industries and industries effect on the environment, which is known as ISO 14000 series. So, in this series, we are going to discuss some another standards. Okay. So, here we will discuss about some emission standards, some ASTM standards for specific sectors. So, let us start with lesson plan. Here in this session, we will discuss about the vehicular emission and air pollution. After that, we will discuss that how we can reduce the vehicular emission. There is specific standard for emission standard, which is known as European emission standards. And then what is Bharat emission standards, we will discuss about that also. And finally, we will discuss about ASTM standard. So, here we will start with vehicular emission. So, what is transportation? It is the largest single source of air pollution, which contributes more than half of the carbon monoxide, and it contributes in nitrogen oxide and almost a quarter of the hydrocarbons emitted into our air. So, a number of studies have shown that pollutant exposures near major roadways are greater than for other areas in the city. And extensive studies link smog of a variety of respiratory and cardiovascular symptoms like asthma, chronic bronchitis and heart diseases. So, it is the air pollution which is very dangerous and it is coming mostly through the roadways. Now, let us check what are the major air pollutants. The major air pollutants are particulate matters, you can see these are very dangerous, and carbon monoxide, which is responsible for global warming. Oxides of nitrogen is very dangerous, and oxides of sulfur, this is responsible for acid rain, and volatile organic chlorides, these are very dangerous air pollutants, and greenhouse gases, they can also damage the environment, as well as some hydrocarbons which are very toxic. These are also playing major role as an air pollutant. So, now we will check that how they are contributing in air pollution. The ingredients of air pollution react to form ground level ozone and other secondary pollutant, and the vehicle emissions contribute to the formation of smog. And this air pollution carries significant risk for human health and the environment. Through clean vehicle and fuel technologies, we can significantly reduce air pollution from our cars and trucks, because majorly we can notice that there is so much problem in roadways only. So, we have to maintain it, we have to just reduce this air pollution. So, let us check that how we can reduce this vehicle emission. First of all, we can consider alternative of travelling. If it is possible, just go for video conferencing and telecommunication, or consider using public transport. Sometime you can walk or biking rather than private automobile, because they create major air pollution. Another way to reduce the air pollution is to keep your vehicle well maintained as that will minimize emissions. Drive at steady speed and avoid rapid acceleration because it increases fuel consumption and pollutant emission also. And another one is, if purchasing a new car, don't forget it, if you purchase a new car, choose a fuel efficient model. It means I am talking about Euro 6 standard. So, as you can see here that there is a particular standard for emissions. So, we will discuss it next slide. Emission standards are requirements that set specific limit to the amount of pollutants that can be released into the environment, because these air pollutants are very dangerous. So, many emission standards focus on regulating pollutants released by automobiles, means motor cars and other powered vehicles, but they can also regulate emissions from industry, power plant, small equipment such as lawn mowers and diesel generators. What is this European emission standard? Let us discuss about this. European emission standards define the acceptable limits for exhaust emission of new vehicles sold in European member state. Air pollutants like NOx, oxides of nitrogen, total hydrocarbons, THC, which is very toxic, non-methane hydrocarbon, carbon monoxide and particulate matter. European emission standards regulate all vehicles. It means they regulate cars, lorries, trains, tractors and similar machinery, but excluding sea-going ships and aeroplanes. For each vehicle, they have different types of standards. Currently, all European and UK cars are tested via the new European driving cycle, which is known as NEDC procedure, where emissions are measured under laboratory conditions on rolling roads. Government agencies act as witnesses to the testing, which is conducted in a controlled environment where the temperature, fluid levels and the tire pressures are all measured in the laboratories. To make emissions test more reflective of real world driving, because they conduct this test in lab, new testing procedures are currently under proposal to be introduced in 2017. The new proposal includes an additional real world driving emissions, which is known as RDE test for regulated pollutant emissions. The RDE is to be carried out on the road instead of the lab, and it will use a portable emissions measurement system to record real world emissions. RDE is more realistic and stringent approach to emission testing in the future. Now, we will discuss about different types of motor vehicles. So, class 1 motor vehicles are known as light vehicles, and these are motor vehicles other than heavy vehicles as defined below, that it is with or without a trailer, and it includes motorcycles, motor tricycles and motor cars. But class 2 motor vehicles are medium heavy vehicles. It means these are medium heavy vehicles which is defined below with 2 axles. For light duty vehicles, Euro 1, Euro 2, 3, 4, 5 standards, we maintain this type of standards. Heavy vehicle means a motor vehicle with at least one heavy axle and or any other vehicle which is principally designed or adapted for the conveyance of persons exceeding 16 in number. But light delivery vehicle means a motor vehicle designed or adapted for the conveyance of person. European emission regulations for new heavy duty diesel engines are commonly referred to as Euro 1 to Euro 6. Sometimes Arabic numerals are also used, but we will use Roman numerals when referencing standard for heavy duty engines and reserve Arabic numerals for light duty vehicle standards. So, the standard is same for light duty vehicle, but we will use Euro 1, Euro 2, the number will be in Arabic numerals, but for heavy duty vehicles we will use the number in Roman numbers. Now, we will discuss about the emission standards in India. Means I want to talk about Bharat emission standards. Euro norms define the maximum limit of pollutant that a vehicle can emit. It means the oxides of carbon, nitrogen oxide, sulfur oxide and suspended particulate matter. If vehicle emits more than this limit, it cannot be sold in Europe. But in India, we follow Euro norms under the label Bharat stage norms. We are gradually implementing them in more and more cities. Bharat stage emission standards are emission standards instituted by the Government of India to regulate the output of air pollutants from internal combustion engine equipment including motor vehicles. The standards and the timeline for implementation are set by the Central Pollution Control Board, which works under the Ministry of Environment and Forest. The European emission standards define the acceptable limits for exhaust emissions of new vehicles. The first European exhaust emissions standard for passenger cars was introduced in 1970, and in 1992, after 22 years, the Euro 1 standard heralded the fitting of catalytic converter to petrol cars, and it is used to reduce carbon monoxide emission. And this time the latest standard is Euro 6. So, all new cars from September 2015 and reduces some pollutant, it reduces some pollutant by 96% if you compare it with the 1992 limits. So, you can see here the dramatic change, the dramatic decrease in the pollutants level. So, let us discuss about what is Euro 1 and Euro 2. The introduction of Euro 1 standard in 1992, as I told you before, it required the switch to unleaded petrol and the universal fitting of catalytic converters to petrol cars, and it is to reduce the carbon monoxide emissions. And the Euro 2, this standard further reduced the limit for carbon monoxide emission and also reduced the combined limit for unburnt hydrocarbons and oxides of nitrogen for both petrol and diesel vehicles. Euro 3 modified. Again there was revision. The Euro 3 modifies the test procedure to eliminate the engine warm-up period and further reduce permitted carbon monoxide and diesel particulate limits. Euro 3 also added a separate NOx limit. They just gave a new limit for oxides of nitrogen for diesel engines and introduce separate hydrocarbon and oxides of nitrogen limits for petrol engine. And in Euro 4, which was introduced in January 2005 and the later Euro 5 in September 2009, they concentrated on cleaning up emissions from diesel cars because they were polluting the environment like anything. So, they controlled it, especially they reduced the particulate matter because they used to suspend in environment and they were damaging the environment, and also on oxides of nitrogen. So, some Euro 4 diesel cars were fitted with particulate filters, they were just reducing the quantity of particulate matter. Euro 5, emissions of the highly noxious pollutants known as oxides of nitrogen, they were damaging the environment, and particulate matter from diesel vehicles are currently 4 to 5 times higher than for petrol vehicles. The Euro 5 directly aims to make diesel cars catch up, although not completely. The Euro 5 limits will reduce emissions of particulates from diesel cars by 80% compared to Euro 4. They were just reducing the emission of the particulate matters. Now, what is Euro 6? From September 2015, all new cars bought must be Euro 6 compliant. The aim of the Euro 6 legislation is to make cars cleaner. This means lower levels of harmful car and when exhaust emission that you may not have heard of, such oxides of nitrogen, carbon monoxides, hydrocarbons, methane hydrocarbons, particulate matter, which is basically a soot. The knock-on effects of reducing these can also mean better fuel economy and lower emission of carbon dioxide and further oxides. Euro 6 standard imposes a further significant reduction in oxides of nitrogen emission from diesel engines, a 67% reduction compared to Euro 5, and establishes similar standards for petrol and diesel. They were using a different type of technology which is known as exhaust gas recirculation. It means they are replacing some of the intake, which is air, which contains 80% nitrogen, with recycled exhaust gas, which reduces the amount of nitrogen available to be oxidized to nitrogen oxide during combustion. So, they were just minimizing these pollutants, and further exhaust after treatment may be required in addition to the diesel particulate filters. They were recirculating the exhaust gas, and which required to meet Euro 5. So, they were just doing a EGR process, exhaust gas recirculation, to minimize the combustion of NOx. So, in this slide you can see the comparative study of Euro emission standard. Here you can see Euro standards from Euro 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and when they just started this one as Euro 1 in 1992, this one is 1996, 2000, 2005 they launched the Euro 4, and Euro 5 was in 2009, and Euro 6 was started from 2014. So, what we are checking here? We are checking the quantity of pollutants. As you can see here, for diesel car, the limitation of this carbon monoxide exhaust was 2.72 gram, right? But here you can just see the drastic decrease here, it is 0.50. So, they are minimizing in every standard, and in Euro 1 it was 2.72, and in Euro 6 you can see that it is 0.50. Same for petrol cars, the oxide of carbon monoxide, which is dangerous, it was 2.72 was the limit here, but now the limit is 1 only. And the major pollutant NOx, the major role of Euro 6 here, they minimizes the oxides of nitrogen. So, as you can see here, it is decreasing as the standard is increasing. Same for petrol cars, in Euro 3 the limit was 0.15 gram, but in Euro 6 it is 0.060. If you check the particulate matters, these are very dangerous substances which is responsible for many pollutants. In the limit was in diesel car, for in Euro 1 it was 0.14, but if you check after EGR, exhaust gas recirculation, it is decreasing. The limit of particulate matter in Euro 6 standard is 0.005. Same here for petrol cars, the limit is 0.005. So, as you can see here that as the standards are revising, the quantity of these pollutants, they are just minimizing the limit. In this slide, we will check about the quantity of oxides of nitrogen in diesel cars specifically. So, these are some standards, Euro 3 standard, 4 standard, 5 and 6. So, as you can see here, the limit was in Euro 3 was 0.50 gram, in 4 it is 0.25, it is decreasing here. In Euro 5 it is 0.18 gram, and as you can see here that it is dramatically decreasing, it is 0.080. So, Euro standard, this Euro 6 standard is minimizing the vehicular emission. So, let us check how to control pollutants. How can we control? So, reduce the emission from vehicle, we can fit catalytic converter. This is a particulate filter, we can filter the particulates because they are just disturbing the environment, and but the chemical catalyst in such devices get immobilized in presence of lead and sulfur, because there is presence of sulfur and lead in petrol and diesel. So, therefore, fuel should have minimal quantity of lead and sulfur. We are already selling lead free petrol. Since year 2000, only lead free petrol sold in India. So, what is this catalytic converter? The exhaust emissions are the non-usable gases, waste. These are waste products produced during the combustion process. Exhaust gases is the standard term used to describe the waste gas from IC engines. In order to significantly reduce these harmful emissions, the three-way catalytic converter was introduced. So, what type of reaction just takes place in catalytic converter? The nitrogen oxide, they convert them in nitrogen and oxide. So, whatever exhaust will just come out from vehicular, it will be not dangerous. Same with oxides of carbon, that carbon monoxide is very dangerous. So, in catalytic converter, oxidation of carbon monoxide takes place and we get carbon dioxide. And the unburnt hydrocarbon which is present in petrol and diesel, the catalytic converter just oxidize them and they change them in carbon dioxide and water, which is not dangerous for the environment. Engines are becoming increasingly environmental friendly and economical, yet also increasingly powerful. The engines will be more powerful now. Why don't we think about alternative fuels? So, let us think about some alternative fuels like methanol. It is alternative fuel for IC engines. It can be used directly or by blending with petrol. 5% ethanol blended petrol, which is known as EBP, it is begin in most states of India. Sumitra committee proposed 20% ethanol blending by 2017. In Brazil, EBP started in mid 70s only. Their car engines designed such way they use even up to 18% ethanol blending. Liquefied petroleum gas and compressed natural gas emits far less pollutants than petrol or diesel. So, we are also using these gases, these LPGs known as auto gas, and it is used in taxis in Korea, Turkey, in Russia, Poland, Italy, and in India also. As the emission standard is controlling the emission of air pollutants, so it is directly affecting the environment. So, the environmental impact of a product standards, for example, will vary according to the different stages of the life cycle, and that can be distinguished in production, in distribution, and in use and end of life. Euro recognizes the importance of environmental protection and sustainable development for current and future generations, because it is regulating the air pollution which was damaging the environment, and therefore, it believes that all standards must take the environment into consideration, as the ISO 14000 series were based on environment, and this emission standard is also taking care of the environment. So, now we will discuss about ASTM. ASTM stands for American Society for Testing and Materials Standard. ASTM International, formerly known as the American Society for Testing and Materials. It is globally recognized leader in the development and delivery of international voluntary consensus standards. Today, some 12,000 ASTM standards are used around the world to improve the product quality, to enhance the safety, to facilitate market access and trade, and build consumer confidence. ASTM's leadership in international standards development is driven by the contributions of its members. More than 30,000 of the world's top technical experts and business professionals representing 150 countries. The ASTM standards, it covers iron and steel product, non-ferrous metal products, metal test methods, analytical procedure constructions. It also covers petroleum products, lubricants and fossil fuels. It covers paints, related coatings and aromatics. It is also covering the textile area, plastic, rubber and electrical insulation and electronics. It is also covering the water and environmental technology. The area is very wide because ASTM standard is covering the nuclear, solar and geothermal energy and as well as medical devices and services. You can check its area in general methods and instrumentation also. It is also covering this area. If you check the chemical specialties and end use products, the ASTM is also taking care of that product. So, let us think that why ASTM standards are important. The ASTM standards and other like standards are very important because in today's building environment, the emphasis is on safe, permanent, low maintenance products, of which stone leads the list in the minds of architects, designers and consumers worldwide. Without a consistent realistic set of standards and testing procedures for stone products, the stone industry as a whole would be in disaster. It will be in disarray. The standards that have been developed and set in place for these products are important tools to help protect end users, individual companies and the industry from negative effects related to product failures. Material standards help to prevent the use of stone products for unsuitable applications. So, let us discuss that how and where are ASTM standards used. We have already discovered that it is covering many areas. It is, if it is textile industry, paint or stone, any industry, it is covering a vast area. So, ASTM standards are used by individuals, companies and other institutions around the world. Purchasers and sellers incorporate standards into contracts. Scientists and engineers use them in their laboratories and offices. If you talk about architects and designers, they use them in their plans. Government also following this, they just around the world, they refer their codes, regulations and laws and many other refer to them for guidance. So, ASTM is very important because it has wide area. ASTM standards enhance the performance and help everyone have confidence in the things they buy and use, from the toy in a child's hand to the aircraft overhead, because everything is safe and reliable and quality measured. ASTM standards are voluntary. Government regulators often give voluntary standards the force of law by citing them in laws, regulations and codes. In the United States, the relationship between private sector standards developers and public sector are strengthened with the 1995 passage of the National Technology Transfer and Advancement Act. The law requires that government agencies use privately developed standards whenever possible, saving taxpayers millions of dollars by simplifying formerly duplicative standards, and it is the developmental efforts. The ASTM standards include test procedures for determining or verifying characteristics as chemical composition, measuring performance. The standards cover refined materials as steel and basic products as machinery and fabricated equipments. The standards produced by ASTM International fall into 6 categories. There are 6 categories. So, these are the standard specification is first category. In second category, the standard test method. Third one is the standard practice. Fourth, the standard guide, and fifth one is the standard classification, and the last one is the terminology standard. The ASTM standards are published in a set of 67 volumes and in 16 sections. So, as you can see here, the 16 section is, section 1 is for iron steel product, because ASTM is covering vast area. The sections 2 is for non-ferrous metal products, 3 is for metal test method, 4 is for construction, 5 is for petroleum products, for paint section C, 7 is for textiles, for plastics this is section 8, section 9 is for rubbers. So, as you can see here that specific areas are in different sections. Using ASTM standards can offer a set of powerful business and marketing tools for organizations of all sizes. You can use them to fine tune your performance and manage the risk you face while operating in more efficient and sustainable ways. They will allow you to demonstrate the quality of what you do to your customers, and they help you to see how embedded practice into your organization. So, finally, the benefits of ASTM. ASTM improves the performance, because success is all about how you perform at every level of your organization. So, standards promote a culture of continual improvement. ASTM, it reduces the business risk. Business today simply cannot afford to take an improvised reactive approach to risk. Using ASTM standards can help you to identify your risk and minimize them. The benefit of ASTM is by helping you take a close look at how you are using energy and resources. Using our standards can save you money and improve your image while benefiting the environment. ASTM also help in encouraging innovation. If you see, in a global economy of rapidly emerging new technologies and markets, standards help set the rules and establish the framework, making it easier to innovate successfully. ASTM helps in improving safety in overseas adventures. Standardization can play a major role in reducing environmental impacts by influencing the choices that are made in connection with the design of products and processes. As standardization and intellectual property rights, it encourages innovation and facilitate the distribution of technology. The ASTM standards, they help European industry and small and medium enterprises to access global markets. It increases competitiveness and efficiency. It reduces trading cost, simplify contractual agreements, and it increases the quality. ASTM standards are very much important because they define how a product is made, used, maintained and disposed of at the end of its life. So, they can thus have a substantial beneficial influence on the way that products and services affect the environment. Those companies actively involved in standards work more frequently, short and long term cost saving and competitive benefits than those that do not participate. So, they are getting so much benefit, they are saving also, there are so many benefits of competitive, there are so many innovations, and finally, ASTM is helping in sustainable environment. So, viewers, in this session we discussed about vehicular emission and how can we control it. we discussed about Euro standards, Euro emission standards. We discussed about what is Euro 6 and Euro 5, what is the difference between these Euro 1 to Euro 6, and after that we also discussed about American Standard for Testing Material, ASTM standards, and its benefit, right. So, in first session we discussed about what is standards, what is its benefit, and what are the different Indian standards, why do we require standards, because as you know standards means always safety, quality and reliability, right. And in next session, in session 2, we discussed about ISO, because ISO is International Standard Organization. We discussed that what is quality management system, which is ISO 9000, what is its benefit, what is PDCA cycle. We discussed in EMS, which was ISO 14000 series, that it is based on plan, do, check and act cycle. And in this session finally, we discussed about emission standards, right. So, in this series we discussed about standardization, as standardization is key role for everything. It is, there are so many benefits of standardization. I hope you got this lesson, and it is very beneficial for development, for government also, right. So, thank you so much. I think you got this lesson.